Good morning and welcome to another edition of A Closer Look. I'm your host, Linda Fontaine. Today my guest is Dennis Courtney. He is the director of Streamworks, which is a new thing going on downtown. Program, here we go, going on downtown Kingsport. Tell me, what is Streamworks, Dennis?
Streamworks is we're a nonprofit, and what we do is we take initiatives in the STEM origin of education, and we want to help facilitate the process of workforce development for the 21st century. So we do that through robotics, we do that through STEM learning, science Olympiads, underwater robotics, drones, anything science related to where we can take a kid and give them a tape measure and then tell them to build a robot and go through the engineering design process first. You know, they have to be able to identify a problem, and then they have to do some research. Then they have to do some prototyping and brainstorming. And then they have to work together in a collaborative environment together, where it's not so much about the technical part that they're learning, which is really cool, but it's also about the soft skills that they're developing, you know, so that they know what it means to show up to work on time. They know what it means to communicate and to collaborate, stay away from drugs, you know, that their teammates are depending on them, because without that one person inside that team, the team fails. And so we teach them that at a very young age. So
that's interesting. So you're teaching them teamwork, you're teaching them engineering.
Yes.
How to use math and science to create these robots.
That's right.
And they get a sense of pride because they've built it. It sounds like a pretty cool program.
It is, and it's a critical program for our communities. You know, half of our engineering and technician workforce is, we don't have enough. We don't have enough spots to fill these critical jobs. You know, next year in our country, 1 million computer science programming jobs will go unfilled in our country because we do not have enough students coming through the pipeline to be able to fill those positions in computer programming and science.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
So we need to get kids more involved in computer programming and science.
Yeah. Engineering.
And engineering. Well, that
math,
seems to be a very popular degree now.
Well, which one?
Engineering.
It should be. There's a lot of emphasis on it because currently, we do a pretty good job in the United States, but unfortunately, I'm afraid to announce that it's not good enough. We are mediocre across the board when you compare to other countries. We are getting our tail kicked in science and math, and we have got to. And here's the thing that we need to really concentrate on: it needs to be more about process than it is content. If we look at the old way that the old classroom instruction, we teach to the test, and so the teacher comes in and says, "Okay, this is what we're going to do this week." The kid gets confused or has a question. What's the first thing they do? They ask the teacher. We need to get away from that. We need to start teaching critical thinking skills for that kid to start figuring the problem out. And the way that we do that through initiatives like building a robot, give them a bunch of PVC and a tape measure and a marker, and tell them to go build a robot that has to fit within a 24-inch diameter volume, and the robot needs to go out and be able to hit a mark in the swimming pool. Maybe we'll simulate that mark as a species or a specimen that they need to go pick up at the bottom of the ocean floor, because these kids are going to have to concentrate on solving real world problems like that in our environment. So let's simulate that, make it a gamification, make it a challenge that they have to work together. The cool thing is you give the kids that challenge, and then you tether them along with little hints, but you let them figure it out, and then you make it a competition amongst other teams. These kids, some of them have never tasted competition before, and we need to reintroduce
Well, we don't have
that.
a lot of that anymore.
Well, we need to put that back in the classroom,
I
because
agree.
what happens in our workforce, it's a competitive environment, and we need to prepare our kids for that environment. So, and it's fun. It is a lot of fun. It's a lot of work. It's the hardest fun you'll ever have, but it's so critical, especially in our upper elementary and our middle schools, where kids are starting to form, like, hey, who am I? Where am I going to go? What am I going to do with this life? Who am I going to be? What kind of career am I going to decide on? Instead of saying, the mark of success is to go to college We need to drill that down just a little bit more and say, hey, the mark of success is maybe being a welder or an engineer
I
or,
agree
or a
100%.
plumber. You know, the average age of a plumber is 58 years old. 58.
And that's what, what's his name, Mike Rowe?
Yeah.
Always talks about on TV. I love him. He says we need more trade and technical workers.
Absolutely.
Because they're what keep the world moving. You know, we can't do all these other things. It's a team process with the whole world. The whole nation.
Let me give you an idea of what's been happening for the last 30, 40 years in the United States. As kids were directed to go to a 4-year college, probably majoring in some kind of degree. They had no clue what they were doing, in business or sociology. You know, sociologists, this last year we had 240,000 kids graduate from college with a sociology degree here in the U.S. There's only 30,000 sociologist jobs in the U.S. So we're definitely off the mark when it comes to sociologists. Same thing in business. You know, a lot of kids, typically a decade is wasted, because a kid graduates from high school and then they spend the next 10 years going from job to job, career to career, to where the average age to finally filling in to the career that they're going to stay with, that has some sticking power for a lifetime, is age 32. What if we could back up that timeline and show a kid that, hey, being a welder or being a plumber or being an electrician or being an electrical engineer or a mechanical engineer, maybe a design engineer, is pretty cool stuff, and you will enjoy it and have a higher quality of life and a higher job satisfaction than you would if you're hanging out at, anyway, I don't want to say that on there, but Starbucks, it's, being in a job, because that's where most kids that go to a college and rack up a bunch of student loans and a debt, where do they end up? They end up in retail. And they end up doing something that they really didn't plan on doing till they finally find their niche at their early 30s.
Wow.
If we could do that, the point to making that transition to get these kids into a system, the European model does really well with helping kids to get into a career that they usually stick with for their lifetime in their 20s. If we could do that, it's estimated, I know in the state of Georgia, if we could back up that train from 32 to 22, the economic impact to the state is $1 billion extra per year.
Wow.
So that's why states are starting to push for STEM education.
I've noticed that. Yeah, they're starting to push that at DB really big too, changing the whole school around.
And DBXL has a robotics team. They're STEM certified now, so they got their STEM certification. One of just a few in the state of Tennessee.
And my girlfriend, she's one of the ones who started that program.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Real impressed.
Great program. Very good.
Yes. Well, I have to say, and I have 3 sons, and none of them are in those fields of engineering and all. Yeah.
It's okay.
I know.
They can always come back.
Well, the oldest one was a history major. But in all fairness, he is in the Air Force and he flies, airplanes. So he does a good thing. And Max is a business major and he is starting his own business. He's trying his own thing. Entrepreneurship. And the baby, okay, he's in his 20s, but he's a survivalist. He's living off the land and teaching survival school.
He's doing what he loves, though.
But that's what I told my kids.
Exactly.
I said, find what you love.
Right.
Do what you love. Don't just do something because you think you're going to make a lot of money.
That's right.
Do what you love and the money will come.
Amen.
If you're passionate about
right.
it. If you work hard at it. And right now he's in Utah apprenticing at a survival school that he went to for 2 years. And he's in heaven.
That is awesome. And kids should do that. The point with STEM education, STEM careers, is that that's your way out of poverty. And with especially disadvantaged students, where they're surrounded by so much negativity and drugs and so many things that it could be a life changer. If they were to get into be exposed to something that's going to draw out and maybe ignite that passion for learning, and that's what these programs do. It draws that out of the kid that may have never had that opportunity. I've got one of my kids in Georgia. I won't say his name, but when I first saw him, he came to a summer robotics program, and I could tell, it ignited that passion for learning. He loved the robots. He loved computer science. Well, fast forward, that kid has graduated from Georgia Tech in a master's program.
Wow.
And a minority male growing up with 3 women in a house, 2 of which were drug addicts. 5 people in a 2-bedroom, low-income
Yes.
house. No father figure. That is the power of these programs, is able to go in there, and now he's a Georgia Tech graduate.
That's
he has hope.
fabulous.
He has a future. And
Yeah,
that's
the
what
odds
this
were
is
stacked
about.
against him, but he
That's right.
prevailed.
That's right. And where there's supply and demand, we have a high need for technology jobs, but low supply. So we can, especially, just not only the disadvantaged students, but the special populations. We traditionally, it's been male dominated. That can no longer be true. That is no longer something that we need to do. We need to make sure that we're offering to young ladies in our school systems to show them that being a civil engineer is pretty cool, because you can go and fix some water systems for kids and say, hey, you can do something good for your community and help people, because they find out, hey, it's not about just building roads and maybe doing some kind of engineering, getting greased and that kind of stuff. So.
Wow, we've just touched on it. You've given me some really good information and stats that I really didn't know existed. And we've just begun. We've got a lot more to talk about. So we'll be back in just a minute with more about StreamWorks.